Hello everyone, welcome to the Pink and YouTube channel. Connor Southwell here, joined by former Norwich City and AFC Bournemouth striker Efan Ekoku. Efan, thank you very much for joining us. Before we sort of get your thoughts on this weekend's fixtures, and obviously it's one that is quite special for you, being two of your former clubs. I thought we'd catch up a little bit with how you're doing. Obviously, you've been one of those fortunate enough to get in games behind closed doors, and we'll talk about sort of how you've found watching Norwich City at the end of last season specifically. But first and foremost, how have you found the experience of watching games without supporters?
Weird, one word. It took quite a lot of getting used to back in July, the first couple of games. Didn't quite feel like a training ground match, but had people use that word surreal, don't they? I'm never really sure what it means. I don't think I'm still quite sure. It just felt odd, to be there and not experiencing what we usually get to experience, with the fans and everything. But it's I was professional enough, to do the game. That's the job. They're commentating, and very quickly, actually, I think even by the second game, I thought, well, okay, if this is the way things are, and they have to be for the time being, and then we go and we do our jobs, which is what I did. I can't imagine what it's like for the players. Honestly, it was very difficult, I would imagine, the first couple of games for them.
Yeah, it must be difficult to sort of recreate that intensity, that sort of atmosphere, I guess, because some players really feed off that, don't they?
Absolutely, yeah. For the players, I think for the coaches, for us as broadcasters, it's difficult to G yourself up, that much when you rely so much on the energy of the crowd and the ferocity of the play, in a way, if you like. They sort of, some players feed off that more than others. Some players respond to it well enough. Some players don't. Some people get intimidated by it, depending on their character, the size of the club, etc. So I've always given, certainly, I think the last few games I did, and certainly going into this season, I've given everybody a little bit of leeway, because I don't think anybody's really accounted for some of the psychological pressure and emotional damage that's been done, to everybody, everybody throughout society. And that's not just, footballers, of course, sportsmen and women up and down the country and in all their disciplines, to be stop-starting, chopping in and out, not sure whether you're coming back to train or not sure whether you're coming back to a job. In many cases, for the smaller clubs, it's not affecting Norwich, of course, and lots of the bigger clubs, but ultimately down the line, that that may well do. People have got things, other than just kicking the ball about to think about, and there's a knock-on effect if things don't go well. So I've given everybody, I think, the last game I did, I was down in Southampton for the Tottenham game, and I said in commentary, I'm just going to give everybody a little bit of leeway. Expect some in different performances. Expect some people to be mentally off, and maybe a few surprises, both individually and collectively as well. That not everybody, can just keep on grinding out the results and the performances. I'll bear that in mind, I think, for quite a few weeks, and hopefully it doesn't affect, too many people in that way. But I think, we could see quite a few weeks before, it will be quite a few weeks before we get into a real kind of rhythm where everybody feels as if this is the kind of show that we expect. But, ultimately it will only be when the fans return.
Yeah, agreed. It still doesn't quite feel like we've started a new season. It almost feels like a continuation of the last one, I think, in many regards.
Yeah.
Just in terms of what you spoke about there, about the leeway that perhaps you've given teams, how much did you give to Norwich at the end of last season? Because they received quite a lot of criticism, didn't they? I think for some of their performances, sort of when football returned. I guess how much leeway do you give them for those, given what you've just said there?
I must be honest, not a lot. Everybody was in the same boat, considering where the Canaries were, what they had to do. I expected a lot more fight. I didn't see enough of that. Didn't see enough quality either. And if you don't get either one of those, then you're in trouble. They were where they were before lockdown, and it was an extremely tall order to pull themselves up. But I was very disappointed that there wasn't. Like I said, taking into account what I said earlier, my opening gambit about players being mentally strained, that applied to everybody. But when you've got more to fight for, you're fighting for survival. Some desperation would have been, not in terms of recklessness, but some real, you show some, what the Mexicans called, cojones, and there wasn't enough of that, I'm afraid. And going down with a whimper is absolutely what they did, which was really disappointing. I was up at Carrow Road a couple of times, at the end of the season, and I didn't see enough fight. It seemed as if the will had been drained out of everybody, which was quite disappointing to see, I must admit.
Yeah, it felt like certainly towards the end there was almost a willingness for it to end, rather than perhaps the fight and the defensive pragmatism that we saw from Aston Villa, I guess, are a really good example of how they got themselves out of it.
Because Connor, I was at the Leicester game where Lewis scored the goal and won 1-0. The atmosphere was unbelievable. I was working for Sky that day, and it was a fantastic atmosphere, a full house also. The players played really well with a real energy, passion against a good Leicester side. Leicester were coming off the boil themselves, of course. They imploded, if you like. They should have been finishing third by a stretch, let alone fifth or sixth, wherever they finished. So it wasn't Leicester in full form, but the way they performed that day, I thought, there's a chance here. There's a good chance that the side can just keep things going. But they need a few more performances like this. Alas, that wasn't to be. So the quality was there on occasion, but you need to match that with the heart, and that wasn't shown.
What would you put it down to then? I mean, you said the quality was there. Do you think it was a mentality issue, and if so, where does that sort of stem from?
Well, there were some quality performances. Ultimately, you need enough quality players to be able to do that consistently. If you got 5 or 6 a core of people who are pretty semi-established, who can drag some of the others along, you expect people to raise their level, to come from the Championship or below. So some did that. It was a little bit patchy, which is what I expected anyway. I wasn't expecting Norwich to finish 6th or 7th. So yes, you need to keep everybody fit. Of course, you get 1 or 2 injuries, a little bit of indecision sometimes, unsure what your best 11 is. I wouldn't say that it was mentality. No, I think that would be unfair on the players. They obviously gave their best. Certainly from early on in the season, I thought there had to be a little bit of acceptance that playing the way they did to win the Championship the season before wasn't going to get the job done. In terms of, it's nice to play this free-flowing attacking football, to say you have a philosophy and where you want to play the game. That's fine, but you're now playing against Liverpool. Now you're playing against Man City. You're playing against X, Y, Z. And no matter where you play that season, you play that level again and even more. Sometimes that's not good enough to win at Wolves, or to win at Sheffield United, or to get a draw at West Ham. There's got to be a little bit of acceptance that there's got to be some variety and ability to change. That's to come from the head coach. If he accepts that, no matter what he says publicly, if he accepts privately on the training ground with the players, we will be doing things differently in order to counter what we will face week in, week out. If you can incorporate that into your game, the players can accept that early on, there's a chance that you'll win matches in different ways. They weren't able to do that. That's why they found themselves adrift at the end.
Just a few more questions on last season. I don't know how much of Norwich you got to see at the start of the season, but compared to perhaps what you saw at the end of the season, did you see a real change in, I guess, approach and I guess in kind of the way that they felt towards the Premier League? Because I think to a lot of people, certainly externally, I don't think that was necessarily the case amongst the fans, but certainly sort of amongst some members of the national media, they sort of perceived it to be Norwich downing tools.
No, I wouldn't say that. You can just get so deflated as a group of players, individually as well, of course, but as a group of players, you sense that other people don't believe that. I'm talking around the training ground, player-wise, and their staff as well, the coaching staff and beyond, don't believe as if it's the situation is retrievable. So that general malaise sets in. You still go and give your best that you can on the day, but that best is nowhere near as good as what it would have been maybe match day 5 or 6. And so there's that. Yeah, as I said, you're drained of mental energy, and if the mental energy is not right, you can't sum up those physical reserves that are always in you. You can see little patches in games where you may get a lucky break, someone bounces off someone's shin on the backside, it goes in the goal, everybody's lifted for 5 minutes, but too easily you can get disheartened if those things don't go your way. And I see it as as an ex-player, I can see when players are sort of going off mentally. But to say that players are down tools, no, I could never say that about anybody. It's just there's a collective dispiritedness which is hard to describe, but I can just sense it, and I certainly sense that the last sort of handful of games, maybe even more, watching the Canaries.
It felt to me, certainly, I think, as the season went on, it was certainly a case of perhaps not having enough quality and maybe the options to maybe change it, because I think we saw a change in Daniel Farke from, again, that free-flowing sort of attacking football that we saw, the reason they beat Manchester City, etc. So perhaps maybe trying to be a bit more pragmatic, but not necessarily having the options in the squad to do that. Is that something that you'd agree with?
Well, that's the bottom line. It's all about the players, the quality of players that you have. No one's a miracle worker. If you put Jurgen Klopp in charge of Norwich, there's a good chance that he won't be able to keep them up either. He may do a little bit better because he's more experienced and has managed, to win stuff. So he may be able to galvanise the players, and his record just makes you, as he said, when he arrived at Anfield, make believers, of the fans. So, but he still needs very good players, and he inherited quite a good squad. So he could probably drag more out of Norwich, and I'm sure Pep Guardiola could drag more out of Norwich as well. So that's no slight on Daniel Farke. These guys are obviously at a different level and have performed at a higher level. As a result, you could put it the other way as well. If Daniel Farke was in charge of Liverpool, he may not win the league, but he'd still do pretty well, wouldn't he, with that group of players? So, if you've got quality players, you have a better chance. And then your tactics, how you marshal the people, how you look after them individually, collectively, in terms of man management, all those things help. And so coaches learn, players learn, and hopefully the group of players and the coaching staff would have learned. And if they're in a position to get themselves back up for next season, and then I would expect them to be more seasoned, is the word. More savvy about the way they go about their business. That's what you hope for. And I said I did quite a few of the Norwich games early on. I was at the Chelsea game, a good performance, I remember. I was at the West Ham game at the Olympic Stadium, very disappointed because of the way they played, the way they were bullied around the football field. Thinking, well, if this is, well, I think I was about match day 4 or something. I looked at it. I think it was 2-0. I looked at the game and I thought the way I was analysing the game afterwards, more so on the way back home, and thinking the way they lost wasn't very, didn't inspire me at all. But, well, you're not inspired when you lose, of course, but I thought the manner of the defeat, the way they were rolled over, not that they rolled over, but West Ham were able to, especially physically roll over. I knew that it was going to be a hard season. So if you don't have the type of player that can match players physically, because when you do come into the Premier League, everybody's generally a little bit bigger, a little bit faster, a little bit stronger, a little bit smarter, a little bit cuter, everything. So you have to raise your level in every single department. If you can't raise it in at least 2 or 3 departments by yourself or within a group, then you find it very difficult.
Are you surprised? Maybe not, I guess, given the sort of comments about quality, and I think I would agree with that. Physicality, I think, it is an area that sort of Stuart Webber has spoken about, Daniel Farke as well, since they've been relegated, and said maybe they weren't physical enough, didn't have the sort of characters and sort of profile of athlete that they needed in the Premier League. But yeah. Are you surprised that they've changed their squad so much? I mean, we've seen 11 new faces come in, we've seen quite a few leave as well. Is that a surprise that they've gone down, and maybe, as opposed to Watford and again Bournemouth, who we'll come on to, instead of deciding to change their sort of manager or their head coach, they've decided to sort of tweak their squad and stick with their head coach?
No, that doesn't surprise me that he's still in charge. I've not seen your full roster, actually. I must admit, I've not seen the 2 games that you played so far against Huddersfield and against Preston. Obviously, seen the results, so it's a decent start. The way that they won the league, 2 years ago was impressive, very impressive indeed, especially on the road. I saw quite a few of the away games, 1 or 2, a few highlights, of course. And if you can get back to playing that kind of football and marry it with 1 or 2, players that can give you more physicality, as we've spoken about, there's still got to be, technically good enough. You can't have just people, who can run and who can't play. Still it's a sport played, we are bipedals, aren't we? But, we're very dexterous with our feet. So you need to be able to manipulate the ball. All those things are extremely important. That's what you're looking for, I'd imagine, in a large with footballers. And then, of course, you can work on the physical aspects every single day, every single week, to improve the play. So, that balance is always very important. I'm sure that is the kind of players you want. And, proof is in the pudding, isn't it? So let's see what happens. Let's, sort of talk again after 12 matches and see where we are, close to 20, and certainly by halfway we'll be looking, or we'll be talking and thinking, this is a side I can challenge once again with 3rd or with 5th or with 9th. one or two things need to change. But certainly for the relegated teams, so much more important for them to get a good start. It erases the bad memories and bad feelings from last season. As you said, it almost feels like it's a continuation, doesn't it, from last season? So even more important in this calendar year to get a good start. And everybody, despite the fact that they can't, get to Carrow Road and watch the games, they still feel as if, well, okay, let's forget what's happening in the rest of the world if we can, and let's look forward to hopefully getting back into the ground soon.
Yeah, completely. I think what you said there is why Norwich's win over Huddersfield on the opening day was so important, because they had 12 straight defeats in all competitions. Is important as sort of the PR and the messaging around the club as much as anything else, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and he lost the League Cup tie, to Luton as well in the same division, so that was a disappointing start. And I'm never a fan of teams and clubs, managers who tend to, especially now, disregard the League Cup as if it's it doesn't matter. The league form is a bread and butter. Yes, it is, but the players, especially as I said, we talked about when you be low on confidence, every single game that comes along is a chance to rectify things. I remember when I was playing at Norwich, 93, 94, and I was injured, but we played Arsenal in the League Cup. Drew the away game 2-2, and I was still injured for the replay. Came back and Arsenal beat us in the replay. I remember Ian Wright scoring, I think, the winner. And I always remember Mike afterwards almost sort of dismissing the League Cup because we were in Europe at the time. So we still got the FA Cup and the UEFA Cup to look forward to. Obviously, want to do well in the league. And I remember being quite pissed off because I thought, this is a chance, to go quite far with quite a good group of players. So it's been done before, but I've never liked it because so easily you can find yourselves out of everything, just like that. All the big teams, let alone a club of the stature of Norwich, which is down a level or two. So it's when you've not been playing well, anyone will do. Take it and move on.
Yeah, absolutely. From what you saw last year, what for you are the key areas that Norwich need to address, the issues that they need to sort of patch up if they are to sort of return to the Premier League and make a better fist of it?
A steady, reliable companion for Ben Godfrey, for one. Happy with the goalkeeper. Tim Krul, I thought he was excellent for most of the campaign. He was one of the few, even when things were going badly, he seemed to be still performing at a quite good level. So, yeah, if they can get a good partner for Ben, I'll be pleased with that. Obviously, Jamal Lewis has left, and it'd be nice if he could find whether Alex Tettey will play majority of games or not this season. Find a good partner for him. The spine of the team, has to be good, and then of course you look for a striker. Adam Idar maybe I would imagine will get a lot more chances this campaign, and Pukki looks as if he'd be staying as well. So if Bendia stays as well, he's not gone, has he, in the last few minutes?
No.
Yeah. So. Then the team is capable, no doubt about that. The guys I know, the new faces, I'm not too familiar with. So yeah, if we can get those guys to perform anywhere near the level that they did for there's quite a few games last season, of course, the season before, and there's a chance. But yeah, you always need fresh blood, and bringing in money for Jamal Lewis as well will help as well. And let's see how they go about utilising it before the window closes.
You seem like the perfect person to ask about the striking situation. Teemu Pukki's obviously sort of opened his account now, which I think is a bit of a relief to everyone. But Adam Idar, what have you made of him? Because he's been quite impressive sort of in the first two games. He's come on as a sub, scored in one and played quite a big role in the other. He's still quite a young lad, capped for the Republic of Ireland already. Yeah. He seems like someone with a big future ahead of him.
Yeah, these young players, when they come in and they show one or two things, I think, especially when a team is struggling, no matter what level they're playing at, just give them their head a little bit, give them a chance. Last season, I thought there was a great opportunity after he scored a hat-trick against Preston in the FA Cup. I saw the highlights of that game, didn't see the whole game. And then I just thought, you know what? The team is struggling to find goals. Pukki, in particular, had gone off the ball by then. I just think, just throw this kid in. Please, just give him a chance. Doesn't matter. Give him half an hour. Give him a game. He's deflated, he's tired. He runs out of steam after 50 minutes. Just play him. Bring him off. Play him. Bring him off. Give him a chance. You never feel more full about yourself as a young kid when you come and you score a few goals. You feel 10 feet tall all of a sudden. The players respond to you. You've earned the respect of your teammates straight away because that's what you're there for. It doesn't matter any area of the field, and it's so easy, to quantify what a striker does, because you see the stats, 8 attempts on goal in 2 games, 4 goals or whatever. People look at that. So give him a chance. I thought Daniel Farke missed an opportunity back in the last season to do that. It may not have made any difference, may have made none at all, but at least it would have brought another young player truly into the fold. It would have given hope, of course, to any of the other young players who are sort of flirting with the squad that, there's a chance here. I've only got to do, I do well, take my opportunity. And sometimes, that opportunity can just be 10 minutes, a dead rubber game at the back end of the season, and that's your chance, to make your mark. So he did that. I don't think he was utilised enough, and that was a shame. But he's got time on his side, a young kid. Let's hope that another year in the Championship as well won't hurt him, and it certainly won't help a few of the other players. I don't think it would have hurt, Jamal Lucy if he would stay. I don't think it will damage, Ben Godfrey too much either. So it's Max Aarons as well. If he stays, we'll come back physically more mature, able, to show that he's capable of playing in the Premier League. So sometimes a relegation is not the worst thing that can happen to you.
Yeah, agreed. I think in terms of some of their development, Ben Godfrey you mentioned there, he seems to me like a perfect example of someone who could benefit from another year of development in the Championship. Because I don't think as good as he was in patches last year, we perhaps didn't see maybe the consistency that you want, but that's sort of standard practice for young players, isn't it?
Yeah.
Let's move on to this weekend then. It's obviously 2 of your former clubs meeting. Before we talk about the fixture itself, how highly do you hold these 2 clubs personally? Because they're 2 clubs that you spent 3 years at Bournemouth and a year at Norwich as well. So how highly do you sort of regard them, I guess, personally?
Yeah, Bournemouth's a funny one actually, because I was there for 3 years, but I turned pro later. Turned pro at 22. I made my debut at 23 for Bournemouth. But then, I suppose physically I wasn't sort of ready to be playing professional football just like that after not playing for so long. It was a checkered time. I only play 71 times I think for Bournemouth. So never really got into my running quickly enough, or as well as I knew that I would have done if I'd had that a good run or not been injured. I enjoyed it, of course, when I was fit and I was playing. When I wasn't, too much time out injured, which was really frustrating. So that slowed my development down, but sort of kicked things on pretty quickly once I got to Norwich. So had obviously I'm much more known for my time at Norwich, even though it was a lot shorter. But it's where you're playing, isn't it? The level. I was in the Premier League, so everybody sees and knows and remembers what you did. So I suppose 10 goals at that level is like 30 or 40, lower down. That's just the way it is. Yeah, so 18 months or so playing for the Canaries in yellow and green was, in a way, much more memorable. But yeah, I've still got a lot of time for Bournemouth. Always looked after their results. Still keep in touch with Steve Fletcher down there. Did a few games there last season. Nice little club. Not many people there from when I was a player, of course. That's a long time ago. But yeah, so pleased to see them when they got promoted a few years ago. 5 or 6 years, 5 years in the top flight was a great return. Absolutely fantastic return. And be nice to see them. Nice to see them back up again. And likewise, they've had a decent start. 4 points out of 6 is not bad. And a similar sort of situation, to Norwich. Good start can put those or put the negativity of the last sort of 6-7 months, firmly in the back of everyone's mind. So it's a fixture that I look forward to. Don't ask me about score.
No, I'll stray away from score predictions. Don't worry. Yeah. But just on Bournemouth, how difficult do you think it's going to be for them, sort of adapting to life without Eddie Howe? I mean, they seem to have done, as you mentioned, there 4 points out of the first 6. That's a perfect start for Jason Tindall, really, isn't it?
Yeah. I didn't expect much change there. I would be very, very surprised if Jason Tindall had not been offered the job, because they, like Bournemouth, I think they're a club who are closely run, nice community down there, and they would have wanted minimal fuss. Any new person coming in, of course, would have been desperate. I wouldn't say more desperate to hold on to good players. I'm sure that Jason Tindall would have liked to have kept Josh King. Ryan Fraser, of course, had sort of gone before the end of the season with not signing a new contract. So there was a little bit of upheaval anyway. But it's hard to know what the players exactly feel with regards to the coaching staff, how they feel about a number two, and number two now becomes a number one. Never easy, of course, in that situation. They always feel the number two is always part of the success when things are going well, but they're also part of the failure as well, aren't they? When things are not going well, and as well as they're done, they would have seen that as fairly, being relegated. So yeah, I wish them the very, very best as well. They've not lost too many players, I don't think. If they can hold on to a couple of more of their key players or their more promising players, then I think they have a great chance. Brooks, of course, if King stays, one or two of the stalwarts who've done fantastically well for them. If they can get fit again, they may be able to drag the last ounce out of them, and they've got a good chance. It's as much about feeling good about yourself. I think the first 5 or 6 games, and if you can get that for the players, you get a few wins, things go your way, the players take advantage. The other teams who see that you maybe got a little bit more resource than them because of where you've been the last few years, I wouldn't say that they get bullied, but if you can just flex your muscles a little bit, thinking, okay, maybe there's something that we can just hold on to here, and maybe being a little bit brave as well in the transfer market the last few days, if they can do that, just to keep, just to remind the players, everybody in a football club, even though you're not, you tell them, we're still a Premier League club, we can still do it. Last season we were at Anfield, last season we were at St James's Park. Try and put that psychological distance between you and a lot of teams in a division. Before you played 20 games and hopefully you're streaking ahead. So it'll be the same for Norwich as well. To not to let too many good players go, because that's a sign. That's a sign, I think, that you've accepted that. Let's just take whatever money we can and hope, as opposed to expecting that we're going to have a great season.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think it's worked better for Bournemouth that they have sold some of those players maybe that did want to go sort of before the season starts? Callum Wilson, Nathan Ake as well, Ramsdale as well. Is that a better situation to be in than perhaps the one Norwich find themselves in? And I guess Bournemouth do to an extent, with sort of the speculation increasing whilst the season's going on and the uncertainty that can provide.
Yeah, I think doing the business early. Ake, I think, was leaving anyway, whether they were relegated or not. I'm not sure whether it was something in his contract, but it seemed, to be common knowledge that he was leaving. I wish him well. Good defender, good player. So they've done their business early with that one of the cherries. The same with Wilson went a few weeks ago, didn't he? Fraser, of course, we talked about had already gone. So I think to settle everybody down, say listen, and maybe to get those players out, that can sometimes send a sign, even if you don't say anything to the other players, that the players will just realise, well, the club has made 50 million here. They don't need to sell me now. That's reduced my chances. I always say, when you know that the club is willing to sell a few players, you want to be first out the door and not last, because the last can sort of get locked in, or one of the last, who's trying to jump out, trying to scramble through the window. So I'd be very surprised now if they sold Brooks or sold anybody who's desirable. I'd be very, very surprised. And yeah, so I would expect down in Bournemouth that if there's going to be any changes, they're going to be additions. Imagine, because they've got a bit of money to spend. Depends on, of course, what the owners think, and whether Jason Simmons thinks they need anybody. Certainly if Josh King were to leave, they'd be in big trouble, I'd say. So they'll probably do their best to hold on to him. Norwich as well. You've lost Jamal Lewis. Big money. Was it 20 million all told? About 15 million up front, so something like that. It's good money. Yeah, Liverpool were willing to pay a little bit less, weren't they? So that was why that never went through. It can happen. So yeah, but holding on to Max Aarons, I think will be quite important. I'm not sure if there's been any bids in for Godfrey or not, whether he's agitating for a move. But yeah, as we talked about earlier, another season playing Championship football, I don't think will do those guys any harm at all. If they're anywhere near the level that they showed, let's say about 15 or so games last season, then they'll be takers, you'd imagine, in January, if the team is not in a shake-up for promotion. If they are, then of course you hold tight. You say, "Come on, guys, we've got 4 or 5 months. We could be back in the Premier League." But if you're struggling, we've got 1 or 2 players doing well. I wouldn't begrudge them, and I hope that the club wouldn't hold them back and to stand in their way.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a funny market at the moment, isn't it? As well, with
Yeah,
sort of
weird, yeah,
some prices really low. You see sort of Matt Doherty going to Tottenham for what, £12 million,
yeah.
and Ben Chilwell going for 50. So it kind of feels a bit strange at the moment, with clubs sort of trying to work out what finances they have to play with.
I think it depends
Just
how
on,
desperate. I mean, I've seen today, I'm not sure if he's gone through, the boy from Barcelona, Nelson Semedo, the fullback, going to Wolves apparently for 30 million, which he's a decent player, but I think, that amount's crazy, absolutely crazy. If they're going to pay £30 million for him, I mean, well, it's so yeah, it depends on how flush you are, and just and how desperate you are. So you may get lucky, and if a massive offer appears, then I'm not sure what the Barcelona. Well, that's not been agreed. Talking about he's agreed personal terms, but it looks like Barca are trying to play the game, aren't they? They've put an offer in for the right back at Ajax as well, haven't they? So they're playing the field, aren't they? They're flirting with everybody.
yeah, it kind of feels a bit like the Jamal Lewis to Liverpool situation, where you have that sort of played out very publicly, and then
Yeah,
suddenly that, as an agent, that helps gets his name out there, and then suddenly
absolutely.
a couple of weeks later Newcastle are in, and that's a deal that gets done. So
Yeah.
I wonder if it's that sort of situation again. And just from watching him last year, are you surprised that he has been linked with sort of that caliber of club? I think he's got a lot of attributes, but clearly a lot of work to do as well.
Yeah, I think he's not physically ready to play, every week. I think actually in the Premier League, period, for anybody. I think watched him quite a few times, and I'm a bit old school in how I look at defenders, and that I tend to not ignore, but tend to put to one side what they do, going forward. So, well, I'm concerned about what they do going backwards, how they physically match up to every situation. Because ultimately, that's what you should be in a team for, is how you stop goals. I know more and more the modern day defender is asked to do more and more going forward. Not that it's a brand new thing. People always say about these overlapping attacking fullbacks, and so I always try to bring out a few names from from when I was a kid and mention, well, actually this guy wasn't bad going forward. The guy called Alan Kennedy played for Liverpool, or Derek Statham, if you're old enough, played for West Brom. Kenny Sansom, Viv Anderson, these guys won the European Cup. Was one of the great attacking fullbacks. Loads of them. There's loads. All throughout the 80s, throughout the 90s, throughout the 90s. It's not a new thing, guys. People talking about this guy's overlapping. So it's not a new thing. Alexander Arnold at Liverpool is fantastic, but it's all been done before. Players coming forward and scoring goals in European Cup finals and etc. But it's nice to see there's maybe more rounded players in a way. More and more are doing it. But I'm always looking at just how strong are you in attack, or how well do you cover your left centre half or right centre half? What's your awareness like? Do you ball watch a lot? All those kind of things. So I think all that aspects of his defensive play has to improve a lot, I think, for him to be playing for a bigger club. And but certainly in terms of being comfortable on the ball, his assist the way he gets forward and supports people in midfield and further forward. Yeah, he looks quite polished, but I don't think he's ready for playing for one of the bigger teams yet. As I said, so I think another year to sort of toughen him up won't do him any harm as well. And but I can understand if you've been courted and by one of the biggest clubs in the world, whether that goes through or not. But there may be other offers or not. But as I said, unless it's fantastic money, I'd be minded to keep him, for the time being.
Yeah, I think that's something that Norwich have done well, isn't it, in terms of maybe getting really good fees for players, and also being really firm in negotiations when they don't get the offer that they want. And I guess, given their model is sort of, well, it runs on the fact that they do need to sell those young players for probably big money to keep themselves going. That's incredibly important, isn't it?
Of course, that helps to run a football club. It also helps to convince youngsters to join the football club in the first place. They see the pathway, don't they? Into the first team, play some games, do really well, get a nice contract, do even better, get some recognition nationally, internationally. When the time is right, if it works out for me, and the club feels as if I've done as best as I can, or the fantastic offer, they'll allow me to leave. That's just business, isn't it? I would imagine that it's like that for most clubs. Even some of the well-established big clubs, they reach a point where the player is no longer as valuable as they were, and if you decide, economically now, we can, try and move them on. They even leave Real Madrid in that kind of situation. Ronaldo left a couple of years ago. They got great money for him. Can't remember what it was for a 32 or 33-year-old, but knowing that he's not quite at his best, he's still pretty good though. but we can get some money back. So if it's good enough for them, for Liverpool, who sold big players, Suarez went to Barcelona, 75 million. Time to move on. Let's make the deal.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Norwich have shown, haven't they, in the past, if the fee's right and it's on their terms, that they'll absolutely do the deal. And you're right, that's such a key part in terms of showing those players sort of underneath, and also players looking to come into the club that that's what they do, and that there is a pathway sort of through the first team, and that they don't hold players back. I guess it's so important, I think, to attracting young players and running a fairly decent academy. Efan, I'm aware I've taken up quite a bit of your time, so I'll finish off just by asking about how I won't ask you for score predictions because you've already asked me not to, so I won't. But in terms of how you see the dynamic of this game going, two sort of freshly relegated clubs trying to, as you said, sort of set their stall out early. How do you see this game going? Do you see it being quite a cagey affair?
I wouldn't expect so. Match day 3 of the season. Both teams right now, in terms of where they were last season, should still have a little bit of belief about them, because they've dropped down, or they've been forced to drop down the level. They should feel as if we are amongst the best teams. Let's put it that way. And in order to remain amongst the best teams, you've got to play like one. So this is an opportunity to put a marker down against what you would expect to be one of your rivals. Let's see if they both last the course. I certainly hope they do, and they're both in shake-up for automatic promotion, or indeed at least the playoffs. So it's a good chance. People are fresh physically as much as they can. It's been a difficult year, as we mentioned. It's not, early matches. I don't think the way that Bournemouth or Norwich play we've seen cautious play, have we, from either side? I would say that Eddie Howe's side on occasion a little bit more cautious, a little bit more seasoned, a lot more seasoned in the Premier League. But maybe Jason Tyndall feels as if at this stage of the season, which I would fully agree that they can be quite open and expansive the way they go about their business. In a smart way, you want to try and force things because you want to get everybody on side. I know that there won't be any fans there, but people are still looking and watching, aren't they? And desperate to know what goes on. So news filters through or gets out. So if the football is attractive as it has been of both clubs the last couple of seasons, in fact for a long, long time, and then people start to believe very, very quickly. So, but it's never easy. It's never easy, and I just can't imagine how the players are dealing with everything at the moment. Play behind closed doors. It'd be nice to experience it in a way, but I'm glad I didn't. Like I said, I'm listening and watching and working on it with a microphone 9 times out of 10 now, and that's an experience in itself.
Yeah, I bet. Do you think this fixture has kind of come at a good time for both clubs, because it probably isn't the pressure of being 15 games in and league sort of positions beginning to take shape, and maybe what you said there can happen in terms of actually maybe they can afford to sort of go at each other a little bit more and try and impress and try and get points on the board, but equally to sort of focus on performances at this stage and the importance of them rather than perhaps results.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think at this stage, it's not quite as important as the result, but it's important to get your processes in place for the players to feel as if or for you to feel as if the players are performing the way that you want to. So mentally, getting everybody to agree to, and I say agree, you have your style of play, plays, formation, or whatever. People know the road that you're going down, and so you can, of course, because it's early on in a campaign, can sort of accept that it might take 5 or 6 games before the players can gel and get towards the system. So if we have a few below par performances, 1 or 2 defeats, we just have to accept that. Hoping that as we progress further down the line by match day 10 and we get to 15 and 20, we are grooved. And then if we always say, it's better that you finish well, doesn't mean that the results or the performances are less important back in August or September than they are in March. They're not, no, but it's very coming with momentum late on can serve you well, or serve you better if you're fresh, or you're fresh mentally. It can be hard to stop that train right at the end. It doesn't always work out. Brentford were fantastic, weren't they, the last 10 or so games, and they lost the last 2 games today or something in the league to not get automatic promotion. So sometimes you can get derailed, can't you, by that big boulder on the tracks. But I think I think both sides, unless there's drastic, the drastic reduction in numbers, should be well equipped, to be very, very competitive, this season.
Yeah, I would agree. Efan, thank you very, very much for joining me. I really appreciate your time. Thank you all very much for watching. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Make sure you leave a like as well. And if you listen to this as a podcast, make sure you leave us a nice review and subscribe as well. Plenty more content coming from, we'll of course have our podcast after Bournemouth where we dissect the result and analyse Norwich City's performance. But full steam ahead now to Dean Court and hopefully 3 points. Thank you very much for watching. Stay safe and see you soon.